There we go. All right. Now it's working. Hello, hi. We're back. Oh, hang on. Oh, no. There we are. I think it's working now. Okay. I had a piece of cheese. I'm having a hashtag not sponsored Kroger Big K root beer, 0 sugar, 0 calories, caffeine free. Although I need a little bit more. This is Mountain Pass. I need something kind of wintry still, but I need it with a bit more to it, methinks. Let's listen to something. Floating ice castle, maybe? Let's see if this one will work. Bagger, I wholly agree. Might be a little too loud still. Still a little too loud. All right. Well, hopefully that background music is enough to be atmospheric, but not distracting. Now, this workshop is going to focus at least on developing a culture for this adventuring environment. We determined that at least one of the characters seems to be a local from here, though maybe not steeped in the actual participation or culture of the place. Now, Bagger, are you just saying that because you don't have a Kroger by you, so it's really easy to do? The others might be in town for to visit, and especially as we created our characters. We created our characters at um, level 11. There's a very good chance that they've already been adventuring up to this point. Oh, okay, Bagger. All right. And being able to present a new area is a great chance at discovery, as well as giving you wiggle room to make calls and improv on the fly about a place or a person or a thing, a noun, if you will. And you may not know exactly everything that one of your players might ask you. You can at least familiarize yourself enough in an exercise like this so that you can make better, or at least you can offer consistent calls about similar things. Now there is a workshop where we did talk about some similar things, and that is when we make our holidays, because that goes into foods and smells and taboos and other things like that. I'm not going to use that worksheet for this exercise. Before the break, where I went up and I got a snack and a drink, pardon me, I did mention that this is a bit of a prototype that I'm building off of the exercises we did in world building last year. Now, if you recall, or you might see it in a playlist on YouTube. Boop, there it is. I'd appreciate a subscribe there as well, and our workshops will get posted up there. It's just a good archive itself to go back and check things. But we have oh shoot, I distracted myself. I was so full of hubris in promoting my YouTube mercilessly to you all that the point escaped. Well, anyway, we're building a new area. Oh, and I'm not using the old worksheets, not because there aren't holidays here. There may very well be. Oh, it was from the world building, right? But I wanted to develop this idea further and see if I can't make it into its own easy to reference sheet like we've used for all these other workshops. And if you recall, from the point where we had created a universe, we had created a galaxy, we created a solar system, and we had created a planet. And by the way, there are references to that month and a half long series of workshops. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But one of the takeaways was that a culture born out of a sentient and sapient race is there to meet various needs, wants, and desires, even, and that there are many things that are born from culture, which can include religion and therefore holidays as its own derivative. So instead of just using the holiday worksheet, I wanted to go deeper with it. And remember, this place is a culmination of the party examination that we went through, which this and our SWOT report, our other party examination, the more mechanical one here, was built on the role-playing exercise of we're pretending that we're a DM running a game for friends, and then we pretended to be our friends making characters to give to our other friend that we want to play. And we did this through random rolls in our workshop. Because if we remove ourselves from the character, I might really like elves. And almost all my characters I play are elves. I'm probably going to be skewed towards making and playing more elves or running another elven setting. Well, this is not my character, nor is this game about me. We're trying to look at something in a vacuum, a situation. So to remove ourselves and any sort of inherent biases that we have from the things that we prefer, or just the common ways that we might play a human, a dwarf, a tiefling, or whatever else, we randomized the elements of the characters through various dice rolls on another workflow. And now we can look forward from that because we've extrapolated the data from there, and we've extrapolated even more data from the extrapolation. And so we're getting a more and more focused and potent view of just what kind of game can we expect or run. How is it that we can create a compelling and engaging setting that isn't just it's completely up to the DM and his or her limited knowledge of geography, geology, sociology, economics, oceanography, anything else, any other study, right? If I don't know much better because I've lived in Ohio for a very long time, most of my settings are going to be very eerily similar to Ohio. Because for one reason or another, I haven't gone out of my way to live, work, or study about other places and how they work. It goes into the expression of if you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Well, we want more tools than just a hammer. A hammer is a very good tool. You can use a hammer for a great many things, but it's not always the right tool. So what we've I know, Sierra, and I would probably do something super cringy, like just reverse the letters of it and call it Oiho, and have it be some hellscape that clearly by reversing the letters it just becomes the opposite of a beautiful bountiful land, and becomes a dire hellscape of dystopian woe. um Shoot, where was I? I was going into, oh right, what we've developed. So from our setting building workshop and the worksheet that we used, well, that's what we're getting into. Spoilers preview. We had a place that was in an intersecting Arctic and coastal biome, ruled over by an autocracy. There's an intact obelisk etched with a dedication. Giant statues are carved out of a cliff. There's a giant crystal shard protruding from the ground. The dominant race here are halflings. The minority race are half elves, which we discussed don't necessarily imply that. Well, how can you have halflings and then half elves, but we've not mentioned humans or elves? Or really just elves, as that's the guaranteed half, and I don't know. What other half would you like? But we explored how this concept could simply be something like the Numenorians in Tolkien's lore, who are humans, just longer lived humans. And so in this case, the concept of a half elf may simply be another type of person that just has an unusually long life. We determined, and by the way, speaking of dystopias, uh, going through the exercises, this absolutely turned into a dystopia here. So we have the halflings are conquerors. The autocrat's status is a feared tyrant. The notable trait about this adventuring place is that it's destitute and run down, known for its godlessness. And if that weren't enough, the current calamity, if the others weren't calamities, are that there is currently a plague ravaging the place, and that there are riots sparking up due to it. And every step that we took in that exercise was helping to bring a clearer and clearer picture of this setting. We were taking our time, we could discuss it and enrich the ideas with themselves. It turned into a self-feeding apparatus. Because what we tend to see, because of the patience that we have in our workshop and the methods we use, the story will write itself. We don't need to aggravate ourselves. We don't need to go, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in writer's block, or the only thing I can think of is the same thing that I've run for the past 4 games now. Just it wears a different silly hat. That led to us making a map. And we pulled out some very expensive, expert tier, you have to be a master's degree holding artist to use. So we opened up Paint and we just started putting color down. We took the ideas from our exercises, our party distillation and our setting distillation, and we blended those spirits with different fruits and spices, so that we flavored it to something that really seemed neat. It really did work. Now that we have these very baseline considerations, for example, if we were in a setting where snow or ice was all but unheard of, why would we have a culture or economy that really takes it into consideration? Or if it did, would we really know how to value something that had a scarcity to it? In this case, we have a very interesting setup, and it's going to have consequences to this place. And what do I mean by that? Well, I am glad that you asked. This was an Arctic biome. However, the giant shard out of the ground we actually put coming up out of the water. And it creates a magical barrier which has helped to control the temperature of this place. We were only in map making mode. I mean, some cultural things came up about where the goats roam, how they're fed, where they're raised. Also, hi, Woden Emeries. About where we could presumably find our characters. You know, we have the statues that are up there to hold back the glacier when it's really just this this field that the crystal emanates. But I was thinking about this more and more, getting prepared for our culture stream. And a part of me made me wonder, as we begin this, would the magic affect other things as well? And by that, I mean not just, it's not necessarily just a filter for what might come in, as it would seem, pardon me, that we do have snow that comes right up to the outside of it. Now, we don't have a scale, so maybe this is actually 1 mile thick, because that's the scale of this place. We didn't talk about that. But if we have an area that's really kept in kind of a stasis almost, that in a sense might help explain part of the decrepitness, or part of the reason why this place has just been exploited as it has, why there has been conquerings and wars, because it is held in a kind of homeostasis. And that is going to play into our cultural worksheet. If any of you aren't familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is a a psychological, maybe even a physiological or philosophical approach to how it is we prioritize or organize our lives as individuals, let alone as a society. You know, building up into a greater society, right? Because it's difficult to worry about earning money which is a part of our safety uh, tier here, if we can't breathe. Are you worried about um are you worried about um seeing a doctor for a cut if there is no water to drink? So, if we take care of our physiological needs, there's another level where if this is taken care of, we can now worry about the safety of ourselves and ultimately of others that are close and radiate out from there. So let's see that we can get the security of our body. We're not as worried. We don't need to spend time, energy, money, or resources in trying to not be eaten by a wolf. And because we can do that, let's even go back to Unga Bunga caveman times. We find a cave so that we can we have a place to breathe, to sleep. We can sleep at all. The cave is temperature controlled, so we have this sense of homeostasis. We have a little corner of the cave, or maybe the stream that flows out of it or by it, for our bodily excretion. And this is a place, in this case, sex is referring to purely biological. This is making more of us to perpetuate our species. There's nothing intimate about that tier because we can't really worry about that just yet. But now we can, right? So we have our cave, and we say, all right, now that we have this, maybe we can focus on other things than trying to stay out of the rain, because we have a place to go to keep the rain off of us, so we're not dying of exposure. And now we can think about and put energy and time, and experimentation towards, well, we have a way to keep our food better for longer. We don't always have to hunt, which means that we still have hunters, but those hunters can protect us from other humans that are going to come over and try and take our food, our shelter, our water, our uh our biological companions. I'll put it in that sense. So now we can actually work on something like that, the security of our body, that we're not going to get ganked in the middle of the night. We've built ways to keep wolves and other people out of our area. Well, now that that is built, whether this is over generations or something, now the next generation or the next iteration of our life says, well, we have our Unga Bunga cave, and we have people who can give us security. Now I can actually do something like enjoy the presence of other people, both because we can be around them longer, as we're not having to hunt and gather. We're not having to just, make babies to replace us because we're dying of old age or natural causes, otherwise. An avalanche is natural, um, at 20 or 30. And so now we actually need to get along with other people and learn about them and live beside them, which is going to introduce other layers of custom and how we live and the things that we do or believe. And so now we can actually do things like have friends, you know, because I might still have Ungas to the left of me and Bungas to the right, and here I am, I'm stuck in the middle with you. So what are you and I gonna do? Let's be friends. Let's work on communication. Let's learn or enjoy and actually enjoy things. Um, and now that we have that level, we can actually look outside of ourselves. Now we look at things like esteem. We have guarded our cave from natural predators or competitive cavemen. We have brought the security of our resources, and in so doing, Fred and Barney here might actually be able to have the ability to value the fact that they're respected by people in their community, that they do things to recognize bravery and confidence. So now we have Fred and Barney actually start a water buffalo lodge. Is it necessary for the survival of the species? No, not at all. But they get to wear the hats. They get to have the horns on the hats. They get to have their meetings about things other than directly surviving, reproducing, or needing to be in fight or flight to keep those things safe. And we have another layer to our culture and our society. And other people go, huh, that's a cool looking hat. How can I get one of those? If I serve in the cave guard, can I be invited to? Yep, you got to protect Betty and Wilma before going to drink grog with the fellas. That's right, Bagger. And in fact, even the fact that we have grog, more than just the stream water, like someone actually had extra grain that they forgot about and let soak in water for a while, and then they had the confidence to try drinking that old wheat water when it could very well have been poisonous and killed them. And we can't afford to lose that many people. Our society is still young, and wouldn't you know, it tastes pretty good. And so if I keep growing extra crops that we don't need every grain of rice or every grain of wheat, I can actually add it to water, wait a little while, and stuff happens. Huh. Well, now we can get into a step of self-actualization. We give each other pats on the back and rewards. We wear the funny hats. We have our Buffalo Lodge. Yep, very much so, Bagger. Absolutely. We are able to actually have friends, or when we go back to our cave, there can actually be more than just reproductive contact between the people of the cave. There might actually be some semblance of feelings of enjoyment or love, or it's actually taken more as a bonding thing than a surviving thing. And now we can look at of philosophy of what is morality and what do we want our morals to be. We can be creative, because instead of just saying, I need to defend myself, here's a rock I'm going to throw, we can think about other things to do with the rocks. Well, I know that rocks can be thrown a good distance, and I know that the stream goes to a lake that has a deep area. I've only ever seen the big fish now and again. I wonder, can I get, if I put a rock on a line and I throw it, it's not going to defend me against a wolf like what we've been doing for a while, but could I actually get something in the deep area if I take a very good throwing rock, I tie it to rope that was made because we didn't need the plants for other things, and I throw it out there, and I let the rope sink? Then we pull it back and say, well, a fish didn't bite on the rock or the rope. So what can I do? How do I catch fish? Well, I spear it. I can also just grab it. But I can't get to the bottom of the... Oh, what if I build a hand out of rope? But we couldn't have thought about that before, and we're trying to scrape an existence, right? So now we can invent things like nets. We can solve our problems that require the ability to actually just sit down and think for a moment, because we have moments to think, and we've developed relationships with other people to try and get their input and to help us experiment, or at least encourage us when we continually fail until we find the proper way forward. Also, hi Daily. Yeah, fish no eat rock. And the big thing too is the acceptance of facts, which is, you might say that that's odd, because it seems like you would have to accept the facts down here at the physiological. You accept the fact that you need to eat and that you need to drink and you have to have breathable air and you can't die of extreme temperatures. There's a difference between acceptance of something and being subjugated to it. These, we are subject to the external forces. There's really nothing that we can do about it. And so it's almost a contention. Here, we actually get to the point where we can reflect on it and perhaps even just accept the things that happen and maybe explain it through a story that could end up turning into a myth or legend or a religion, or just the natural process of thinking and how a culture can develop along the way, or accepting, like understanding that there are bad things and accepting that bad things happen, or the lack of prejudice where we come through and say, all right, well, the other tribe has been harassing us for, many moons. And, anytime I see someone not in my rubble or Flintstone, clan of the cave bear here, maybe because of our bounty or because of the fact we can think, they might not all be so bad, or especially if we can also help uplift them. And therefore, we don't just murder any person that happens to walk by our cave. And we might be able to develop trade and get these, and get the opinions of the Ungas and the Bungas, instead of just get their stones thrown at us, or they get the stones we throw at them. And also, we might, in so doing, learn that the Unga tribe actually lives in a area of the lake, or by the lake, that is deeper, and they actually get more of these fish that we've been struggling to get for so long. The Bungas, meanwhile, live in an area that has this rock that if you hit it with something, it makes sparks, fire. We have fire, and we've accepted that it's a sacred thing because it's so rare. It has a scarcity to it. But they can just make it. Fire to the Bungas isn't just something that happens, a day after you eat something super spicy. Wait, that's a different kind of fiery Bunga. Um, so to the Bungas, making sparks and fire is, there's nothing sacred nor religious about it. Everyone does it. And now we can actually go and trade. And if we don't have items to trade, maybe because the other tribes, the Ungas and the Bungas, haven't had the luxury of getting as far up here that we have, we can come into an area with what we've learned, and we can teach morality, we can teach educational topics, we can teach processes, and we can help them learn about the self-actualization tier of things, while they're trying to just scrape by on safety or maybe love and belonging. And of course, that feedback cycle is interesting. And well, where we have one culture in our tribe of cavemen, now these concepts in their different ways with different people who live in different areas. Now they say, well, the Flintstone and Rubble tribe talks about this not just killing people on sight. And that seems like a good idea. We never thought of that before. However, we do know that what would be a good example here? Because of the way that we, for our generations, have continued to survive and reproduce and instill these more natural lessons, we're going to meet them halfway. We don't have the same conditions as them, so we're not going to kill everyone who walks by. But we're only going to kill people who aren't the Flintstones, the Rubbles, or the Bungas. Because while we don't interact with the Bungas that much, we know that they get along with the Flintstones and the Rubbles. And we're pretty good trading partners with them. Now, if we see another person who's not wearing the skins of the animals that are by us or whatever else, then we are going to kill them because our tribe is smaller and more fragile. Yeah, we have an abundance of large fish, but we can't take the same risk that the larger clan can. So we're going to do things at a half measure, and then that culture grows up with that half measure. Now, by the Flintstones and the Rubbles, the Ungas are, they're civil enough. They're not completely barbaric, but they still do just kill people that they don't recognize. And you see that the other two cultures are doing things to be recognizable. And that might mean something like, especially if they want to go and get the fish, they have to wear a special symbol. Like maybe it looks like a fish. And now all three tribes have adopted what a fish symbol looks like. Maybe it looks like two parentheses that meet at the end but have a little tail here. And for those of you who don't know, that this actually would be more like this. You make you show the sign, you make the sign or something. Hi, Rose Wolf. The Crudes. There you go, Miller. The Crudes. Oh, and you have Waffle House carrot. That sounds really good, Heretic. But anyway, now you can see that a culture has developed. An economy has developed because of, if only one tribe at first did that, that still becomes a specialty and something that they can show the way for others. That you can live like this. You can actually think these things or create wonderful inventions that others couldn't because they've been spending so much time trying to scrape together a survival that they've literally not had the time to think. But now they think, and therefore they are, and society continues ahead. That is an example of what I want to get into with the concept of the hierarchy of needs being used as a step-by-step way to build a culture for an environment that you are presenting in your fantasy games. And which is why I took that here, and we have a list, and maybe not all of it is applicable, and that's fine. Not everything on the worksheets are always applicable, but I want to keep it there in case we do an exercise where it is. Now, if we look at what we've made, breathing is not necessarily a difficult thing to worry about when it comes to culture. Now, where would it be in this world? Are we worried about our oxygen levels? Well, whether we knew about oxygen or not, at some point in time in our history, that's not as relevant as making sure that you're living in a place that won't have the air attack you. Now, what do I mean by attack? How can the air attack you? If you live in a place that is prone to fire, maybe by a volcano, or in an area that is very consistently on fire, breathing is difficult because of the embers and the toxic fumes. Or if you're next to some very noxious tar pit or something, right? Breathing is an issue if the area floods often and you can't breathe the water. Now, I don't know of many humans who can breathe water, but that's important. How else can the air attack you? Well, if you live in a desert area, you're not so much worried about the oxygen levels of the desert, but you are worried about the air that you breathe choking you because it's filled with sand. In this instance, I don't know if we necessarily have much to worry about when it comes to being able to breathe. I mean, there's the obvious. Well, there is water. Okay, yeah, that's a little bit more obvious. Now, food. If we look at this place, what might be some common foods that this little bubble area can provide? It's clear it has trees and grasses and hills. This area is kept very temperate because of the magic. So I'd imagine that there's a lot of there's probably a large seafood component. There might very well be crayfish that are in the rivers and the deltas from the meltwater from the glacier that's constantly being melted down. Um, but I imagine that seafood is going to take uh, a high importance in this area. That's going to be a bounty, especially if fish or other things are drawn in from outside because of the warm water. This is actually a little hot spot, quite literally a hot spot for life. I'm sorry, I missed a couple things in chat here. Bagger says the tribe that doesn't have fish would trade what they do have for access to fish, and that breeds an economy. Yes. Miller says, wait, we have to save the dinosaur family so we can still have lizard folk. Variety of seafood along with local fauna around the area. Yep, we know that goats are a part of this area. So some very common food would be seafood, would be goat, perhaps. Now, if we go the route of how Indians, how at least Hindu Indians, see or treat cattle, that is a sacred life form because of all that it represents about life and bounty and all the things that are provided. So there is a case where the sacred cow is a sacred goat. Though from our discussions, it sounds like these people are fine riding goats into battle, racing them for sport, and probably eating them as well. Fruit trees that handle cold air, might be important to see. Apples or currants. Yep, and that's also anything that also hasn't been brought in by the conquerors at any point in time, because by now anyone who used to live here, if anyone actually lived here, are probably gone, or they're the last people to have conquered and have now been conquered themselves. And it might just be a constant layering and layering. But we can put something like apples can work in a colder weather. This is Arctic. We will have some longer nights, and also there's times of the year where the day will last a good long while too. Just going off of what I know. Remember, it like you can use what you know. In our area here, being next to Lake Erie, the lake is large enough and especially positioned, whereas the weather blows in from west to east, it helps to insulate this region. It keeps it a little warmer longer in the wintertime and cooler longer in the summer. As such, this area is pretty good for grapes. And the there are many very good wines that come out of the Lake Erie area because of the insulating effect that the lake has. And on top of that, the soil in the region has been churned so much throughout the ice ages. There's a very solid limestone that underlies everything, and the soil is very, very rich in these parts. And because of the more temperate weather, because of the lake, this is also a bounty for grapes to grow. Hi, Scanian. Like jackalope, you say. Speaking of wild game, we had to make a trip the other day and had to stop because of a pack of wild turkey. Local fauna like um or hang on, I missed it here. So fruit trees, local fauna, wild pig or deer. Wild game for sure, says Bagger. Temperate climate, wild pigs will actually flourish and become a nuisance. The area is remote because of the cold, but might of the cold, but the are might be known got specialty cheeses made from the Arctic goat. Oh yeah, so definitely dairy from the goats, meat and dairy. Apples. There might have been, and as we said, if this is an attractive area because of the natural resources here, uh, there could have been other things like boar that were brought in. So while this is there's a certain irony that this place is frozen in time, despite not actually being frozen like everything around it. But over the years, if something didn't survive the Arctic tundra around the area and just sort of wandered in and found its way here, many people might have brought their things over time, which is interesting because it might flourish here, but as soon as a butterfly hits this barrier, the butterfly is dead, right? There's no way it can survive outside of this barrier. And this is acting almost as a containment as well for those more exotic species. Now, there's probably some that can go back and forth and do because they need or at least want the cold and what it can offer. All right, so we have some examples there. Water, we have plenty of fresh water from the glacier. In this case, the glacier that's coming down might very well be chock full of minerals from scraping down a mountain and scraping across the land for as long as it has. Is that going to do anything in particular? Well, that depends if you want some sort of a magical mineral or something that can make the people hardier or more reinforced. in mechanical terms in D&D, maybe everyone who lives in the area uh, has the toughness feat because the water is so fortified that not only is it consistent in everywhere, but the water just makes everyone here tougher. And that could be something that is a gift given to the characters, well, to the players of the characters, when they're here for long enough. They drank enough of the water that at some point you, as the DM, as the storyteller, can say, "All right, you all have the toughness feat now. Enjoy it. By the way, you're probably going to need it. Wink. Don't die." Now, as for this, this we can presume happens. Maybe it doesn't. Um, this can be hampered perhaps by the plague. Whether it's a physiological hampering or it's simply the need for this to occur. And if we have a society where you need more people being made because they're dying off for one reason or another, because of the environment, because of war, because of famine, or something else, this is going to have an impact on your culture as well, because then the laws that you make or the moral imperatives you use to coerce behavior are going to encourage this behavior. Um, so this part of the culture is, how is this accepted or taken by the people here? Or if for some reason we say, you know what, this everyone is trapped and frozen in time. Everyone here is actually dead and nothing more than a spirit that has been preserved by the crystal. And in this case, this thing here doesn't happen at all except for the visitors that arrive, because there's no um, physiological nor moral imperative to create more people. It's a low priority, if one at all. Like drinking water from the well in Lord of the Rings, it made the hobbits taller, but the tree nearby decided to try and absorb them. For sleep, this is your, again, you can say, all right, well, I mean, I'm sure these people sleep. Well, do they? Do the half elves sleep, or do they trance? Can they be magically put to sleep? Remember, this is a fantasy world, and we're using D&D 5e as the inspiration. Is there something to that needs to be taken into consideration? Now, this was the big one. Well, actually, here, before we go to homeostasis, let's go to excretion. Does this place have a sewer system? Are they that advanced? Are there sewers, or does everyone just pee in the river and they let it take it out to the bay? Is the concept of a toilet invented yet? And if so, is it accepted? Or do people still just go out and do their business and go back into their house and it's just there? No one cares or acknowledges it, because maybe to them it's natural. It just is what it is. Or is there a manufactured way to contain and encourage the waste to not linger in their city? Just let it go. Now, as for the homeostasis, and this is perhaps the biggest note, which can influence the culture of the place, because before anything else, we are dealing with something that is physiological. Given the nature of the shield, does that mean that only things passing into and out of this veil, this shield, are affected? Or, and what could make for a very interesting complication and also very rich, fertile foil for culture. What if things are kept in such a state? Pardon me. What if things are kept in such a state that fire isn't hot? Or fire doesn't work at all? Or maybe fire only works if you're super close to it, like maybe for cooking. But because of the nature of the dome and not just the barrier, the heat is dissipated quickly. Meaning you can all but put your hand in the fire and it's comfortable. Now, what that might mean mechanically for a game is that people with fire spells or ice spells find that unless they are at some point blank range or at some, diminishment over time, they're not as effective. So you can start a fire, but the energy quickly, is absorbed. So you can have light, some heat is provided, but unless you're right there on the fire, it's being used up, right? That in itself can create some very interesting complications. And complications aren't necessarily bad things, they're very interesting things. It is never too hot nor too cold. And in fact, if this crystal is actually seen as a force for homeostasis, I want to say there's a character on Mad TV that used to have that as a tagline. A clown, if I recall. No, anyway, for homeostasis, what if that crystal also provides light when it's dark? What if there's actually never truly night beyond anything that any shadows that are cast by buildings or other things that are blocking the light emitted from the crystal when it's otherwise dim or dark? This, if this is some sort of a dome that dims bright light, this is some sort of a dimming dome. The locals might call it a dimmadome, even. And on that fundamental note, how does their society work? Do they eat a lot of their food raw? Or at least only, like cooked in a very special way? Fire and ice magic have almost, not that they're not effective, but have almost no effect. And you end up learning that this place is so destitute because people want to fight over it for supposedly being perfect. But it's a little too perfect. And I see that I've been bonked by Heretic Trance for the pun. Maybe, Miller, Doug is the name of the feared tyrant autocrat who runs this place. Hi, Jedi Prime Alex. And when I was going over this in practice to present to you all, I said, this crystal is actually what is continuing the homeostasis, but unnaturally so, and not just because it's magical. there might actually almost be a kind of fatigue that sets in. The plants love it, I'm sure. There's probably almost no not growing season here. The crops are probably growing all year round. So food and water are in abundance. You can walk around in your birthday suit, and there's no shrinkage because cool air never really gets in, and neither does anything very hot. But when you're here, there is just a sameness, staticness. There's always light. And for those who are sensitive to fire or ice, they will find those senses that deflect, produce, or interact with it dulled or warped because of that. Hmm. Not a Discworld, Jedi Prime Alex. So something to think about. In a sense, that's what I was looking for. I asked chat, and no one, at least that I remember, said it. I said, "What is the area that's in Antarctica that Mister Sinister runs?" But it's like its own kind of an oasis in the middle of Antarctica. But there's a bunch of warm things and tropical trees and dinosaurs and stuff. That was it. Thank you, Jedi. And if that is the case, if this is actually some sort of a crystal of homeostasis, can you imagine feeling a rain that is always the same temperature? There's never snow. There's always rain, and the rain is it's never that cool or refreshing. It's always comfortable 72-degree rain or something along those lines, right? But we can build our culture if we take a step-by-step look, one at a time, through the steps of the hierarchy. Now, I'm gonna get up and take a little bit of a break. I depleted my cold soda, and when we come back, I want to take the idea that was seeded here, and I want to move it in an economic direction. And let's discuss, how does a place like this work? What are the economic concerns it might have? And we'll continue on. So hold those ideas. I will be back in just a bit. And I want to finish tonight's workshopping with you all by going over that as an exercise, and how would a place like this operate? What would they value? How would they value it, etc. So hold on tight. I will be right back, everyone.